of you.
Perfect.
So we're going to try to keep pace with you, Rosie.
So we have all of us live on our YouTube stream right now, and we are trying two different things tonight for you all, and hopefully we're crossing our fingers, give us some grace. We're trying some things first time. We have an ASL interpretation or translation happening at the same time. If you need that service, I'm going to share my screen again so you can make sure you see that. If you need that service, you can join that with the short URL that's in the slide right there, and you'll join in a meeting with Glenn Petites. He is our ASL interpreter, and he will provide ASL services. Also, I know that Rosie should be translating. There is and maybe she can describe it, there is a globe button toward the bottom of your screen if you're joining and needing to hear this in Spanish. I'll point to it right here. Looks like that. And if you click on that, you can choose Spanish. And there's copies of the slides if you want them. Okay. And Rosie's actively translating. I see that happening. I think Glenn is going on his side. So he is using our YouTube stream to do the translation in ASL. So a couple of firsts for us tonight, and we're excited to provide those services for our community. I'm gonna switch over and switch the slides, Paul, to the starting slide. I'll let you kind of talk about where we're going tonight as I get that ready.
Okay. Ron, thank you. Everybody, that is our Director of Technology, Ron Brown, who's been instrumental for many years in our district, but we literally could not be where we are at today through COVID, through the first online experience without him. Parents, community members, I want to welcome you to our Smart Restart Town Hall this evening. As Ron said, we are working hard each and every day to become a more inclusive school district, to be a district that welcomes more and more people to our table, to be seen, be heard, be valued. It's an incredibly important aspect of our boards and the values of equity, and ensuring that, again, all of our community members are at the table and have the ability to have a strong voice in the work that we're doing here in the Wenatchee School District. I also want to say thank you to all of our community members, all of our parents and staff members who may be listening as well, but mainly to our parents. Thank you for working with us. I recognize this is probably not the decision that most people wanted for us. It's not a decision that I wanted either, or staff. But I appreciate our community standing by us as we move into this next phase of our Smart Restart. So our Smart Restart really lives with three or four of our goals, our guiding principles. And our first guiding principle, Ron, if we're going to go to that next slide, thank you. If we can, that first guiding principle is really around the safety and wellness of our students and staff. That second is delivering high quality instruction, regardless of where it's at, being virtual or hybrid. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. We want to provide parents and students choice in instructional delivery. We'll speak about that as well as the flexibility of transitioning between instructional models when appropriate. Our next slide is about when we return. Our goal, if we go to another slide, Ron. Our goal is to return to at least a hybrid approach when it's safe. We hope to do this sooner rather than later, because we recognize the importance of face-to-face instruction, and there is a difference. No one can tell you anything different. There is a difference when we have our students face-to-face with us, when our teachers are in our schools, when our staff members are in our schools. That's when we're best. But due to this, we're going to continue to move forward and to continue to expect greatness of our students and of our staff as well. The considerations, so we move into the next slide. For me, it was the safety and wellness. When I had to bring forward a recommendation, and the recommendation came from me, but it was my staff, my cabinet, principals, and many others. Safety and the wellness, well-being of our 8,000 plus students, our over 1,000 staff members, our parents in our community. And really it came down, this is a health risk. And we really needed to lean into our medical professionals. We've been listening to our area medical professionals. We've been listening to regional. We've been listening to state, and we've been listening to national perspectives on COVID. And the reality is the alarming high rate of COVID in our community. Currently, we're somewhere in that 500 cases per 100,000. What we're hearing that the state is going to be recommending is in a safer area is somewhere in the 75 to 100,000. So you can see that our numbers continue not to be in a place where we believe it's safe. Ron, next slide. So our Smart Restart plan is really set up into two stages. Stage one is this continuous learning 2.0. And that's a term that the state superintendent, Chris Reichdahl, has coined. And it's one we're using within our plan, our Smart Restart plan. It really is about online learning and what that looks like. And we're going to detail that tonight. But doors open virtually, doors open on August 26th. Stage two, and hopefully we can get there sooner rather than later, but we really are going to need a community to come together to help us get to stage two because of the numbers that I talked about earlier. We have to reduce the amount of COVID within our community in order for it to be safe for our students to come into our schools. And then our stage one, so we're really going to focus now on the continuous learning 2.0 and really what does that look like in our schools. It's going to start on August 26th. All of our pre-K through 12 students are going to be receiving their core instruction virtually. We really want to replicate the start and end of our school days with our new start times for our elementary, middle, and high school. We want to replicate that as much as possible while recognizing we don't want students on our computers all day long for 6.5, 7 hours. So Mike Lane, our executive director of learning and teaching, he's going to talk a little bit later on about what that day is starting to look like. And again, continuous learning 2.0, it's our temporary plan until area health officials deem it safe for us to move back into the stage two or the hybrid. We learned a lot in the spring. We did learn a tremendous amount over those 3 months, that March 17th all the way through the middle of June. We learned some really good pieces. We learned ways that we should not be engaging. We learned how to make sure that our students are more accountable through grading and those different pieces. And we learned a lot from our day-to-day instruction over these last 3 months. So what my promise is that it's going to be a more robust, more rigorous, more structured, and more consistent learning environment that we're going to be providing in our continuous learning 2.0. We spent a lot of time gathering survey feedback from our parents, from our staff, from our students. Mike Lane and myself did a number of different small group interactions, 10 to 12 parents at a time, and really hearing from the parents in these focus groups about what was working and what wasn't working, being really honest with us. And everybody was tremendous in those conversations. So that feedback has really helped shape this work that we're presenting this evening. One of the things that you'll be hearing about, that Ron will be speaking to us about, is our new learning management system called Canvas. We heard very directly from our parents and our staff and our students, we need to enhance our professional development around technology. And we heard from our parents and our teachers how important it is that we support our parents with some professional development as well. So we're also working with our educators to create robust units of study. These are really outcome-based, competency-based outcomes for our students, K-12. Again, this is a way we hold the bar high for all of our students throughout our district. And then, as I spoke about earlier, we will be assigning grades, due dates, and really trying to create that more typical educational feel with high expectations for all of our students. But at the core of all this, and at the core of COVID, is this health and safety. It is critical that we follow the mitigating strategies. When we're in the 2.0, there will be some opportunities for a few students to be in our schools, but even then, they're going to be following our mitigating strategies of everyone wearing masks, social distancing, the hygiene, cohorting, where students stay together with teachers as well. But that's going to be really important, that our teachers have the proper PPE and that we have that available. We've already made all of those orders and we're ready to move forward in that area. But we really think about it as far as place, space, people, and time. All of those are critical aspects of our plan. I'm going to hand it over to Mike Lane, the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into what is Continuous Learning 2.0. Mike?
Thanks, Paul. So as traumatic and as challenging as the springtime was, one of the things that we actually had going for us was that our teachers had already established relationships with their students and with their parents. And we know that that is an important component that really cannot be overemphasized. And so we have put together a plan in partnership with our building principals for providing some in-person, on-site transition specifically aimed at our kindergartners, our 6th graders, and our 9th graders. We're continuing to work. We're also hearing from our elementary principals that they would like to see some form of in-person transition activities at all of their grade levels, and we are looking at the possibilities of doing that. But just know that these plans are in session for one-on-one or small group transition activities where we are bringing our kindergartners and our parents in and really kind of getting them acclimated to kindergarten and to the technology that will be required in that. We have similar plans at the secondary level. Ron, if you want to switch me over, thank you. 6th grade in particular, we would be providing in-person, small group, very small group, socially distanced, completely masked up, opportunities for students to really emphasize the relationships with their teachers in their new school, focused on the social emotional learning aspects. We're going to distribute their iPads to them and teach them how they're accessing technology, and also spend some time teaching them about the routines of secondary school. For our incoming 9th graders at Wenatchee High School, they've already been they've already been involved in some of these activities because the high school has been taking the ball and running with it, but they too will provide some in-person leadership activities and freshman orientation activities, again focused on our new learning management system that Ron Bound will tell you about, really talking with the kids about what it means to be acquiring credits and working a path towards graduation, and then all of the various student supports that are available at the high school. Our West Side program, at this point, they're focused on doing some virtual transitions, but I know that Dr. Corey Kalahar, when he finds out that we are allowing some in-person things, that he will put some in-person small group transition activities in play for his students as well. So that just gives you a little bit of the snapshot about how we're planning to transition our students back to school in August. So, Ron?
So I just want to give you an update. You should have heard the word Canvas by now, somehow, somewhere. And I want to make sure everybody understands what this is. It is not the answer to all of our prayers. It is a system that will help us have a starting place that's consistent for all of the classes. All of the students will have courses within Canvas. All of the teachers will teach and launch students into their learning via Canvas. The common terminology is a learning management system, or LMS for short. You'll hear that about others around. In the spring, to make an analogy, I guess we would have called Google Classroom a very light learning management system, but it just didn't have the structure, and it didn't have a good way for parents to monitor students. It didn't have a great way to organize the learning for students. Super simple tool, and teachers loved it. So give us some grace and patience. We're going to be learning this en masse starting in a couple weeks by all of our staff members. They're going to be doing their best to provide all of the learning through Canvas. What this will also enable us to do is when we transition to stage 2 and eventually to face again, we'll continue to use Canvas for our learning activities. So our unit planning, our big ideas, our assessments, our activities we want students to do, we'll launch those from Canvas courses. And this will help it be consistent, and it will also give the parents a tool to become what are called observers, so they can monitor their students' progress in all of their courses through one login. It has a very robust interface, but yet simple enough for the observers to track and monitor their students, and a great messaging system for parents to send messages to the staff member or to their own students in the classes. So we're looking forward to Canvas. We want to make this as simple as we can. We chose some templates as kind of launch places for courses by grade band. So you'll notice, I'm going to put my mouse back over here. Just these are very, very generic ideas that came from the company. And these are the typical launch areas. So when you log in, when a student logs in, they'll see these big buttons. They will then launch into their learning activities that the teachers have provided through that interface. So you can get an idea what it might look like over the course of the year as teachers become experts at this tool. These will look a lot better. These will be polished. There will be some flavor. There will be pictures of teachers. There will be pictures of other things that they might do in class, but we're going to try to start very consistent, so everybody is on the same page, especially at the start of the year. And here's some 5th through 8th and 9th through 12th grade examples of those. So you can kind of get a feeling, and that would be what the first place you would see, or your student would see, when they go to their class. And then from there, they get to their lessons, their assessments, their tests, their quizzes, their daily instruction through online, through Zoom or other means. So that's a little bit about Canvas. There will be more coming. We will have some training on those that you'll hear a little bit about, and ways in which we're going to help you out as a parent community to get in and have visibility into your students' progress.
And I'll take this, the student schedule. We are currently working, our building principals are currently creating the daily schedules and what those will look like. As Paul mentioned earlier, they will as much as possible mirror the start and end times that our students will be using at the schools when we go back to our hybrid and in-person model. If you are watching the school board presentation that we did last week, we put up some sample schedules, and those sample schedules came from Wenatchee Internet Academy. And I'll talk more about Wenatchee Internet Academy in just a moment. But we got some feedback on those sample schedules from families and from our administrators. We heard mostly from our younger parents of our younger students and from our elementary principals sharing some concerns about those schedules. And what Paul and I heard loud and clear this spring during our community forums was that there is a need for increased structure and support for both students and for family members. But we also need to remember that everybody is experiencing this pandemic and this crisis, and everybody has their own family issues. They may have multiple children. They may have multiple children at different grade levels. And so we want to make sure that we're providing enough flexibility for families so that this is something that actually is possible. So we should be getting out some draft schedules at the 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school. Look for those next week. But what they will comprise would be components of online instruction. We will continue to use paper and pencil and textbook materials that we would use if we were in person. Hands-on experiences and breaks and periods scheduled throughout the day, and also scheduled meal times. We are aware that there is concerns, and we share those concerns about the amount of time that our students potentially would spend looking into a computer screen, and we are trying to take steps to balance that as well. We really want our students using the technology to be accessing their learning and creating things, not just being passive consumers of information. So I'm going to share the next couple slides, Ron, if you want to move me on. This will give you kind of an idea, a general idea of what a typical class period would look like. And there'll be some variations in this, whether your child is at the elementary or the middle or the high school. But essentially at the beginning of a class, that's where you're going to see the live, or what we refer to as synchronous connections between teachers and students, where the teachers are checking in with the students, setting goals, learning objectives for the day or the class period, and perhaps scheduling some small group touch points where students can actually be working with other students, which would be something that would continue and we would build upon when we move into our hybrid model. During the middle of the class period is where you really get to the heart of the instruction. That's where the teacher is reviewing those big ideas. Paul mentioned earlier about those robust unit plans and those learning standards. This is also during the time when the actual direct instruction would be happening, where I, as say a math teacher, am teaching my students new content. During the end of the middle section of the lesson is where students would be able to take part in either guided practice or individual student practice. And there's the opportunity within any given class period for some offline time, potentially, depending on what the activity is, where the students would be able to close the laptop and do some other work that might not necessarily involve the computer. At the end of the class is where we do what we refer to as formative assessments, where we're kind of checking on our progress for the lesson or for the day, and really asking the student to reflect on their learning, on whether they met the objective for the lesson, and what potentially would be the next steps. Ron, if you take me over to the next slide. This is the same information, and it's just a different way to look at it. We don't have necessarily time frames in here because we know that depending on the level, the time frames may be slightly different. But again, this presentation will be available on our website that you can refer back to. And these are sort of the guiding examples of what a class period would look like that our building principals are using as they're collaborating to create their schedules. We're actually going to continue that work with them tomorrow, bright and early at 8 a.m. when we bring them all together for one of our meetings. So I think that's it for that section, Ron. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. This next point is really speaking about those students who are furthest from educational justice. And it's an opportunity for us to support some of our students who may have some significant financial impact, lack of internet connectivity, or any other issues that we determine really put them at a significant difference than other students. But again, this is going to be limited. This is going to be looking like 5 students, masks on, socially distanced, working with a classified staff member, potentially a certified staff member. A certified staff member is more like a teacher. But what this is about is creating a physical space, our buildings, a internet access through our own Wi-Fi, our technology, and then the support of an adult in the room with them. Again, we're going to be working with our principals, with counselors and others to go through a criteria and helping and really supporting students who have many different obstacles in their way, in their path toward them achieving their own greatness. Again, it's going to be limited, but we recognize there are many students who have some disadvantages that sit in front of them, and we hope to remove some of those obstacles for them. We also have an opportunity to provide, not us, but through a third-party vendor, some structured childcare. I'm going to ask Kelly Lopez to speak on that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we heard consistently through all of our forums was, what about the kids whose parents need to go to work all day? And therefore we've partnered, or we are partnering with the YMCA to provide some structured childcare. We are going to provide the facilities. They are going to provide the staffing and the programming. They have committed to helping the kids follow their classroom schedules and providing some minimal technical and educational support. Obviously that includes recess, lunch, and they will be following all the safety protocols as well. Again, since this is through the YMCA, they will be handling all the registration. It is limited, so we're not going to have a ton of spots available, and that's just due to facility constraints and staffing constraints from them. Since the registration will be through the YMCA, they will put it up on their website when it's available. It's not currently available, so no need to contact them, but once we have all the details worked out, they will get that posted up there.
We also hope to be working with some other community partners to be pushing out other daycare or childcare opportunities, because we know many of our families are two-parent working. They're both working, and how does that work for that elementary age student? So we're trying to bridge some gaps there in the childcare process, and really using us as that opportunity to make those connections for our parents and our community members. Mike?
Yeah, beginning the week of August 17th is when we'll start our plan for supporting our parents in Continuous Learning 2.0. We'll rely on some of what you might consider traditional ways of supporting parents through online tools linked to our website, social media posts, and shared. We have a new program called Remind that will help us, allow us to communicate much more efficiently and much more effectively, and also providing a course for parents within Canvas so they have their own place or hub that they can go to for information on how they can best support their student. In addition to that, though, we know that we need to go out into our community and do outreach for them. So this would be in-person community outreach, of course, socially distanced and with masks on. We are scheduling at this point for outdoor transition activities. The current thinking is that we would have evening sessions so that families can get one-on-one help, where we would be one of us with a family and their child and their laptop, so that we can get them hooked up and get them the tools that they need to access their learning. We have several sites that'll be not only our own school sites, but we realize we need to do a better job of going into our community and to places where they are the most comfortable to reach out to them. And of course, the entire thing would be provided in both English and Spanish. Wenatchee Internet Academy is our option that we have put in place. This students enroll now and at any stage going forward throughout the year. These are for any of our students, K-12 students, who would prefer to have their students learn online for the remainder of the school year and don't intend to send their students back when we go to our hybrid model or to our in-person model. WIA is a full-time standalone school. It's supported by Wenatchee School District teachers with daily facilitated instruction. Students are able to access robust series of learning that is provided by our teachers. The K-12 curriculum is similar to the current Wenatchee School District classroom curriculum, and it's aligned with standards. We do have some limitations around which courses we are able to offer at Wenatchee Internet Academy. We have a website dedicated to that, and then families can register their child and attend online and get more information on the web page or by calling the district office. And I just want to underscore one component here, the difference between Wenatchee Internet Academy and what we are calling Continuous Learning 2.0. Wenatchee Internet Academy is, again, for those families who prefer not to send their child back to any form of in-person schooling this school year. That they're understanding that this would be a year-long commitment to online learning. For other students who are now doing online learning because that's the decision that has been made, but who would want their students back in person in classrooms when we move to hybrid and when we move to our full online model, or excuse me, full in-person model, then you would just remain at your neighborhood school where you're currently registered.
And we recognize that WIA was up and many parents were registering prior to our decision to move the entire district to online. So we are giving parents the flexibility, if you were signed up in WIA, to move back over to the continuous learning 2.0. So we'll work with our parents in that way as well. We're hopeful sooner rather than later that we'll be able to move into stage 2 of our hybrid approach. And again, this will be a K-12 hybrid approach, bringing back our youngest students first and having a slow transition from our pre-K1 all the way up to high school, but it will be a slow transition process. All of our students from WIA, Continuous Learning 2.0, and the hybrid will all be using Canvas. Canvas is going to be a really important tool for all students, all parents at all times. And it will be something that we'll continue to use in years to come as well. It's going to be an important component of the work that we do. So as we're sitting here tonight, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on hybrid, but know that we internally have spent a tremendous amount of time looking at that, and we're ready to go when we find when the health officials are saying that it is safe to move back into that type of learning environment. The other piece I want to highlight before we move into the additional supports are around the daycare and the child care and the academic justice. We're talking about a very small, very limited number of students participating in those. When you think of childcare, don't think of the large YMCA where hundreds of students are all together. It really is 5 students, staff member, all in cohorts, really sticking within those small groups together. But the reality is we recognize that there are some childcare issues out there for many of our parents. So moving on to this additional supports that we want to continue serving students further from social justice, develop plans and partnerships with others in the community around childcare. We're going to continue to provide meals for children, just as we did during the first opportunity to go online with a breakfast and lunch. We're going to support our technology and internet access. That needs to be a really robust part of our plan, and it is. Ron and his team have done an outstanding job, and we're going to continue supporting our parents and others in that area. The other piece that we're doing, we had a meeting today around community outreach and dual language resources for online learning. Is continuing to engage our Latino community in making sure that they are feeling included into the conversation and they know how to access the information that is available for their students and for them. So those will be the supports that we continue to put in place as we move closer towards August 26th. So let's jump into the Q&A. Number of parents and community members sent in questions prior to the start of this meeting. And then we have Diana Haglin, our Director of Communication, who's looking at all the questions online. And what she'll do is pull a few. We're not going to be able to answer every question, but what we do promise is that we will answer them in writing and put them out to the public in an FAQ format. But we're going to try to get through a number of questions here tonight. So the first one, Ron, is there childcare available for those that don't qualify from the furthest from educational justice? Yes, through the YMCA. And again, we're working with other partners to see what's available as well. But that will be there. It really is about also having support for the students to have that technology, limited educational support, but it's that safety and recess and lunch as well. So we're working on it. But it is we're going to need to partner with our community to have a even more robust childcare.
I'll take this one. So I just talked about this briefly. What is the difference between Wenatchee Internet Academy and Continuous Learning 2.0? Remember, Wenatchee Internet Academy is a year-long virtual learning commitment. You're signing up for that to remain in it for the entire school year. Continuous Learning 2.0 is temporary until we are able to move to our hybrid model and then eventually to an in-person model. Quite honestly, as we start the school year, the two programs may seem fairly similar, but they will become quite different when we move to our hybrid model. We would not want people enrolling their child in Wenatchee Internet Academy and then unenrolling them and then submit and re-enrolling them in their neighborhood school once we go to the hybrid model. That would be a difficult transition, mostly because they would be having to get used to a new teacher and a new routine and potentially new expectations. So again, WIA year-long, fully online, continuous learning is our temporary model until we can move to the hybrid model. I'm worried about screen time. Will my child be on the computer for 7 hours daily? We hope not. We are worried about screen time as well. As we're working on our schedule, as I mentioned, we're scheduling in those breaks. We're scheduling in what we call offline or heads down time, where students are just simply doing work or doing independent practice. And we've built in time for elective type activities that don't necessarily need to be done staring into a computer screen. And we really want to focus on students using the technology to access their learning and to create products as a result of their learning, as opposed to simply, surfing social media or consuming information, which is oftentimes what we think of when we talk about screen time. So, next one, Ron. Oh, there it is. Concerned about the social emotional health of children. What is the district's plan for supporting them? Our families and our students have access to our principals, our counselors, our teachers, and our social service specialists at any time. We're planning outreach events and opportunities to connect with staff in person. We have a group of people, a very large group of people right now, planning how we can coordinate to get additional supports to our families during this time, because we recognize, as far as social emotional well-being, this is not the best way to go about starting a school year for our kiddos. In addition to that, our SEL team, led by Dr. Corey Kalahar from Westside High School, they're creating 4 weeks of school, 4 weeks of social emotional learning that can be delivered and integrated into virtual classrooms. And those will be materials that will be supplement the current social emotional check-ins that staff will be doing. And so we've got a kind of a comprehensive plan to address this really heavily at the beginning of the school year and then continue it throughout the school year.
Okay, and this one's mine. So how will we handle our IEP services? I know this is a question for any family having a student with a disability. How are we going to make this the best possible experience for them? We will be looking at IEP services on a case-by-case individual basis. We will follow any state and health guidelines, ensuring safety first for both the staff, the students, and the families. But really looking at, I know you heard Paul say robust, right? This is going to be different than it looked like in the spring. So we are working long hours to try to determine how is this going to be the most effective for our students with IEPs, and what is that going to look like. We're looking at different platforms for related services. How can we do a really good job at speech therapy in this model? And also at a case-by-case basis, what students with IEPs that just cannot do some online learning may be farthest from educational justice. So.
Where do parents go for help with technology or online learning? We talked about this a little bit briefly, but There we go. In-person and online sessions will be available for parents to receive training and support with technology and access to Canvas. We used the hotline last spring. That worked pretty well. I'm assuming we'll use that again, and I see Ron nodding, so hopefully that's the case. Yep. Dates and times and locations for the community outreach and the support activities that I mentioned earlier will be communicated to families in both languages very soon. Ron, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not.
No, Mike, you said that well. I just want to assure parents we're thinking of you. We heard loud and clear from our feedback that we need to do a better job in providing more things for your navigation. That's one of the reasons why we went with the new learning management system. So we're going to do our best, and please reach out to us. And that help support line also reaches me and my department to give us ideas along with asking for help, because the parents experiencing it, you guys will know what we need to work on and make better. So please reach out and give us that feedback too, as we get into the school year, especially when we're reaching out to you.
Thank you, Ron and Mike. This next question, did the district consider all of the options for returning to school? What about outside education? Yeah, we spent significant time looking at many different options. We investigated many other facilities around us, large facilities that may be able to house larger groups of students who could be socially distanced further and further away. And we had conversations with different leaders throughout the community, throughout the region, to see if that was a possibility. And at the end of the day, if there became more problems than solutions, we really had to walk away from all of those different ways of going to other facilities. We thought about, this outdoor education aspect, using tents and bringing all those pieces in. However, living here just 1 year, the conditions are not conducive to having students outside in tents. And again, we'd still need to have them socially distanced. So there's still tons of issues with students being outside. The most important is weather, be it really hot, really cold, windy, rainy, snow. All of those different pieces just added to the complexity of the problem. As I was speaking with somebody who just came in from California last week, and they were like, oh man, it's 75 every day. That's not what we have here. We don't have 75 degrees every day here. And it just made trying to solve that problem, like I said before, just more challenging each time we thought of something new. But do know that my team, myself, we were exploring, we were speaking to different organizations, we were trying to problem solve through this process to ensure that, because we wanted our students back. I hope every parent knows our preference is to be in person, is to have our students with us, to have our staff there. We know, again, that's where we do our best. It wasn't until about 10, 12 days ago when we had to shift all of our planning. Everything we were planning for, we had the three options. We had the face-to-face at the elementary, hybrid at the 6 through 12, and then our WIA program. But when the doctors came in and spoke to us, and medical professionals came and spoke to us, we had to shift. We had to make that shift. So I just want everybody in our community to know how we want our kids to be in our building. That's where we know we do our best, but the risk was just too high. So since my child is learning online and not in the classroom, will I get a refund on my taxes? The answer is no. The answer is no. Our staff are working diligently, and you're going to see a significant difference from the spring. Again, I commend every educator who did their work, and our staff in the spring, because it was literally within 3 days we were teaching, we were doing our activities. But as Mike walked through, it's going to be more structured, more rigorous, more robust. than we saw in the springtime. And again, our educators, our teaching staff, they're working a full schedule to meet the needs of our students. We're also looking at how do we support more and more students, those furthest from educational justice in our plan. And we want to be able to support our students, and that takes staff. I get the frustration. I get it. But I hope you will see in our plan and then in our actions in the coming weeks and months, how our staff are working to ensure great outcomes by every student in this district. Diana?
So how will the Wenatchee School District communicate with me as a parent? The district currently uses a variety of different methods. We know there is no one size fits all methodology for communicating with parents. We do heavily lean on email to get quick communication out to our families. We have also leveraged print communication. You may have noticed if you've been in our district for some time, we've started to mail out district letters as well as postcards, one of which you'll be receiving in the week ahead with more information about Wenatchee Internet Academy. Also our automated calls, and we will be transitioning to the Remind system. So we'll be rolling out text messaging as well as our social media to communicate, again, quick messaging to get information out and links to our parents and the public. We really do rely on parents to make sure that your contact information is up to date so that we can ensure you're getting the messages. We encourage you, if you're wondering if your information is current or if you haven't received anything from us, please contact your child's school. Schools will be opening soon to take your calls, and we can update your information over the phone. Currently on our website, wenatcheeschools.org, we also have a button to update your contact information, and you can fill out a quick form. We would just really want to make sure that we have good information for you and that we can continue to keep you in the loop.
Diana, you want to ask us some of the questions that were coming in on our Q&A?
Yeah, actually, if we could run through the predetermined slides and maybe we finish with that piece. I think some of the questions that have been popping up in the threads will be answered in our kind of pre-developed questions. Actually, I'm sorry, I'll take that back. We already did that.
I got number
Sorry,
slides.
I've been living in the threads, so. All right, we're gonna go ahead and jump into the questions that everybody has submitted. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for those who have been populating our Q&A feed. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts. And as Dr. Gordon mentioned early on, we will be creating a Q&A sheet as well as some additional questions that we know we didn't get to answer maybe today, and we'll have that on our website. Please do give us a little bit of time to answer all of these questions thoroughly, and we'll notify the public and our parents when that Q&A is live. But first question right out of the chute is, what drove our decision to transition to online school in the fall, knowing that there's a lot of data and research out there, particularly from the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics, that clearly recommends face-to-face instruction?
Yeah, Diana, great question. Community members, thank you. Parents, thank you for that question. I've read every one of those. My cabinet team has read every one of those. Board members have read all of those pieces of information from the federal government, from the national perspective of what they believe is best for students is face-to-face. And I've said it probably 5 times tonight. I believe face-to-face is the most important aspect of what we're doing. We believe we make those relationships, which are the foundation to a great education. However, as I said earlier, I've spent months listening to different doctors, different medical experts, health administrators, locally, the state level, and nationally. And over the last, I would say 20 days, the conversations have shifted from we should all be opening to what's happening in your local area, making sure that we're being really responsive in those areas. And that's what made me drill down, and many superintendents in the Chelan Douglas County really starting to drill down into asking questions of our local health officials. I reached out to Dr. Peter Rutherford, who's the CEO of Confluence Health. And I also reached out to Dr. Mark Johnson, a infectious disease expert. I reached out to those two gentlemen specifically because they live in the Wenatchee School District community. Dr. Rutherford is a longtime community member whose children went through our schools. His wife is known for her volunteerism throughout the community. Reach out to Dr. Mark Johnson for the same reason. He has children in our elementary schools. But I also, more importantly, reached out to him for their expertise and these fields, and really trying to understand how would they guide us with understanding the CDC, the American Pediatrics Association, and others. And what they said was, it's really critical to understand the level of COVID within each and every community. At the national level, those are good recommendations. But again, you have to come back into your community to say what's happening in your community, those local decisions. And as I said before, the recommendation at the time was 25 cases per 100,000. We're currently above 500 cases per 100,000. And these doctors, and from the Chelan Douglas County, Dr. Malcolm Butler is part of this group. All three of them, amongst many others, said the risk was too great. The risk was too great. I had to lean in for my recommendation to the Board of Education. I had to lean into local experts who've put their life, their whole life into the medical field and understanding what's happening. Also understanding what's happening on a local level, how the hospitals are being overflown and what's occurring in their worlds. The other piece that was critical is understanding the percentage of COVID in our area. Dr. Birx, who leads the coronavirus, the White House coronavirus team, just on a Sunday show, what day is today? Forgetting my days of the week. Well, whenever Sunday was, this past Sunday, she spoke. The person who was interviewing her asked, so what is that rate of that schools should be going back and be considered? From Dr. Birx, she said, I worry that a community is going back that is anywhere above 5%. In our community, we're in the 13 to 15% of COVID. That is why I made that recommendation, is for the health and safety of our students. The other piece that the doctors have been really keen on, and this is an important one. Most students throughout the world have been out of school since March 17th. The amount of data on students is very limited. We're now, quite honestly, seeing when students are going back into schools around this country and around the world. And we're seeing a lot of schools being shut down in a short order because of the transmission. The other piece that they're learning more about is the infection rate for younger children. I, by no means, am a medical doctor. It is why I had to lean into the advice of these people. And I still feel I feel great about that decision. I wish our kids were all back. But on a medical side of the house, that's where I had to make that recommendation. And the board had to vote for that recommendation as well. That's my why behind this decision. Diana, other questions?
Yes, we do have quite a few. Up next, what are the supply expectations for families in the virtual classroom, and will laptops be provided for all students?
I'm gonna pass that one to my friend Mike, and then Ron as well on the laptop one.
Supplies, that's a good question, because when we were shut down in the springtime, as you are all well aware, our schools were not accessible to our students or to our teachers in any manner. We actually told our teachers, you may not go back into your classroom to get any of the materials that you need. We are in a different place here where we are looking at ways to facilitate supplies, and whether they're supplies that would be manipulatives that would aid learning, or hands-on activities that could be done at home. We are looking at ways of doing that to get those materials to our students, and then potentially even getting any sort of projects or assignments that are done at home back to our teachers. So that will look a little bit different than it did in the springtime. Ron, do you want to talk about the laptop piece?
Yeah, just very briefly, we did use a sizable portion of our CARES Act money at the local level to purchase more devices for students. When we released in the spring and closed, we were about 33,000 short, or maybe a little closer to 3,500 devices short. We've not been a one-to-one, which is, one device per child district in the past. So we had to look far and wide for everything we had. So we acted quickly, knowing, I guess, very good crystal ball that this potentially could happen. We purchased quite a few devices. We are, and I'll be very honest, we should be one-to-one, which is one device per one student in every site in the near future, but there are some supply constraints. We are one of hundreds of thousands of school districts around the country doing the same thing and going online. So there are some supply constraints. We put in our orders very early in March, and most will be here on time, but there will be some where we're going to need families to use their own device for the short term. We're hoping by the middle to end of September would be the latest that we would be able to accommodate families and get every student a device. So we're moving as fast as we can and as fast as we can receive them, set them up, and get them ready for your kids. And it will look similar to what we did in the spring. We will have to do, through the transition times that Mike talked about, some checkouts in those arenas, but we will also probably have to have, if we're not back to hybrid, we'll have to have some drive in, drive up, checkouts to our local community and our local families. But the goal would be one device per child, not one per family, and we will get there. Just give us a little bit of time and grace.
Okay, up next, when should I expect to hear from my child's school with the schedule and any details about starting online?
Yeah, we're in the process, cabinet team, our building leadership teams, we're in the process of refining our school schedules, which you're going to see a lot of similarities between levels, elementary level, middle, and the Wenatchee High School. You're going to see similarities at each of those areas. I would hope within the next 2 weeks, we're going to be communicating out around more of the structure, the schedules themselves. But then you're going to also be hearing from your individual schools about the details for that school and for the teachers in that area. Mike, anything you would offer on that one?
No, just that we've been working all of July with our principals, originally planning for a hybrid and in-person model, and now planning for continuous learning 2.0. So like Paul said, probably in the next 2 weeks to really be looking for that information coming out.
Okay, next question. What would the COVID numbers have to look like in order to move to a hybrid model or to stage 2? And do the district's stages align with the state's reopening phases?
Yeah, so I was able to see a draft of what we believe will be coming from the state and the regions around the number of infections of COVID per 100,000. I'm seeing anywhere between 75 and 100. So it's an increase from the 25, but we're still significantly far off of that number. If we're still, I didn't check today's numbers, but we were above 500. So we would need to be either between 75 and 100 per 100,000 for us to move into that next phase. The phasing from the original orders to go online, this will take place of that. This new state and regional guidance around the infection rate within each community will really take precedence over anything else. And that's what will move us into, along with our local, the Chelan Douglas County Health Administrators will also give approval for us to move into that stage 2 for us, which is hybrid. So again, those are numbers that I've seen in draft form, but I do believe that those will be coming out from at the state level and at the regional level in the coming days, if not probably next 10 days.
Okay, great. My daughter is registered at her school and will be doing continuous learning 2.0. What happens if the district decides it's safe to shift to hybrid, but as parents, we don't feel it's safe for her to go back?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. And as I sit here tonight, and again, I want to be clear, I don't have all the answers. My cabinet doesn't have all the answers, but this is one that we'll continue to think about is, would a parent have that ability to move right into WIA because you're just not comfortable with it? And my being the superintendent, so I can probably take a little bit further leap here, was yes, that I think you would have that ability to move into WIA. Anyone want to challenge? Anyone want to disagree with me?
No, I was going to say, yeah, the answer to that would be yes, yes.
So next question has to do with flexibility. Many of the questions we know are coming from families who have 2 working parents in the household. They're wondering what type of flexibility will be available in the student schedule, both continuous learning 2.0 and WIA.
That's a piece that actually Mike and I and the learning and teaching team have been really thinking hard about, along with our principals. How do we create some flexibility in allowing parents who exactly as Diana described it, can't be there during the school day with their students. So we're really thinking about how there are going to be different opportunities for parents to be able to watch the recording, to see the instruction from a recorded standpoint, and as well being able to access educators at different points throughout the day to make sure that they're touching base. I'm going to hand it over to Mike here in a second as well, but I think another component that we haven't spoken a lot about is a lot of the work that we're going to be doing with our mental health team, our social workers, our counselors and others, where we're really trying to make sure that we're making a connection with our parents and understanding, especially our working parents, and seeing what kind of supports they need for their kids to be successful as well. Mike?
Yeah, and as Paul said, we were having these conversations today with our principals, specifically this conversation with our elementary principals about how do we provide a schedule that is structured and supportive, but is also very flexible for the exact situation that Diana mentioned. We have some ideas. We're not quite ready to roll those out, but we have heard you. We understand that we need to create opportunities for families to access this schedule at times other than what's listed on what we would refer to as a bell schedule. We are aware, especially in families or households where 2 people are working, that isn't the greatest solution to have everybody on that kind of a regimented schedule. So we are working with our principals to put some supports in place for that, so that the learning and the teaching could be accessed at a different time, and then increasing our opportunities for having one-on-one communication with parents and with students, where our teachers would be potentially more available than they traditionally are for scheduling one-on-one meetings that could occur either in person or virtually, to really address the part that potentially you miss when you're watching a recording of a lesson, is that interaction with the teacher and get some specific questions answered. So we are working on that, and we have heard those concerns. So thank you again for bringing those forward.
Okay, next question. Are there any concerns that you will have enough teachers and staff that are willing to return to the classroom once it's time to transition to stage 2? I heard there was a poll among teachers in the district that showed only 10% of teachers were willing to return.
No, actually, our teachers they want to be back in the classroom too, in a safe environment. But actually, the survey was quite the opposite, that our teachers were willing to get back in and be with our students. Kelly, anything you would add to that? Kelly's our executive director of human resources.
No, there's nothing really to add. I would echo that. Prior to us making the decision to go online, our teaching and classified staff were pretty prepared to come back, and they just wanted really to partner with us of how to do that safely. So I don't foresee that being a concern.
Next question is, can you explain cohorting when you move into phase 2? What does that look like? What does that mean?
Mike, you want to take that one?
Sure. So cohorting is a plan that we would use where we would keep groups of students together as much as possible. And the reason for that is on the chance that somebody has a positive test for COVID, we need to do the contact tracing that you've heard so much about and really make sure that we get to anybody that person had contact with. And one of the mitigating strategies that we would use for that is cohorting, so that we don't have students. We want to limit the amount of mixture that students are doing throughout the day, limit the amount of transitions that would occur. Obviously, cohorting is much easier at the elementary school than it is at the middle school or the high school. It becomes a bit more complex, but there are still some things that we can do to reduce the amount of potential transmission from student to student or student to staff member. So that's cohorting essentially means keeping smaller groups of kids together most of the time.
And we would also use cohorting in our educational justice and in any childcare that's being provided through a third party as well.
Next question has to do with grading. Can you describe the grading scale? Will grades be distributed on a traditional letter grade scale as opposed to an A or fail that was implemented last spring?
I'll take that one if you want, Paul. Yeah. So yeah, we will go to our, I don't like using the word traditional grading policy, but we will go back to the grading policies that were in place when we were in person. And so I believe at the middle schools, they will be utilizing the standards-based approach, which they have in the past. High schools will be using the letter grades. So it will be very much the way that it was previously, with the additional aspect that we need to provide an additional amount of grace for our students and our families around the whole connectivity issue and around the whole the fact that we are still going through a pandemic and that the community still is in crisis, and that it's up to us to come to our families with solutions and to be understanding and to share grace and understanding with them. But yes, we will be using traditional grading practices, which will be increasing the sense of accountability for the students.
Okay, we're about winding down on our Q&A. A lot of the questions that are being asked may have been asked previously or addressed previously in the presentation. Any final thoughts from our panelists, or any further direction that the panelists would like to take today's presentation at this time?
You know, I'd just like to thank our parents, community members for showing up tonight, asking some great questions about where are we at in the Wenatchee School District and where are we going forward to. So thank you for giving your time. Thank you for submitting questions beforehand. Thank you for being engaged in the Q&A. We're going to continue communicating with our parents in our community, making sure that our parents are well aware of all the decisions we're making in regard to our Smart Restart plan. It's a thoughtful plan. There's no perfect plan, but it's one that we're collaborating with teachers on and educators and school leaders to make sure we're being as thoughtful as possible as we move through and get ready to open our doors on August 26th. So thank you for attending tonight, and we look forward to continued communication. Have a great night, everybody. Be safe. Rosie, thank you. Nice job.